Today's episode is brought to you by Slater's 50/50 and The Brew Bar. The Everything Sequel podcast contains explicit language, and I will not go to my room. Yippee-ki-yay, Mr. Falcon, and welcome to the Everything Sequel podcast. Those who know Tom, all right?
Yeah.
Now, that's in reference to Die Hard 2, Die Harder, but today we're talking about Die Hard with a Vengeance, the 1995 sequel. John McTiernan is back. My name is Michael Shantz. I'm of the How Dare You Awards. With me, talking about Die Hard today, we got Tom Stewart of Lonesome Whistle Productions. What have you got for us, Tom?
You can stick your well-laid plans up your well-laid ass.
I always look forward. I'm always wrong. I never know which one you're going to go with.
It's just whatever jumps out at me. And it's always the strangest line.
All right. Well, today we're talking about Die Hard with a Vengeance. This was a 1995 movie, like I said. This, again, just like Die Hard 2, the seventh highest grossing movie. So Die Hard, 1990, the seventh highest grossing movie. 1995, the seventh highest grossing movie.
They've really cornered that very limited box office market.
Man. This movie had a budget of $90 million, Tom. They spent every penny of it. It made $100 million in the U.S., but made $366 worldwide. This was, a huge movie overseas. I feel like this movie doesn't get a lot of love in the USA. Like, most people think of it as the weakest of the sequels. I think that's pure nonsense.
That is complete nonsense. You know what I think the biggest problem might be? And I'm saying this with all seriousness. It sounds like a joke. I think the aspect ratio of this movie is too wide for most people's TVs.
Oh, man.
Because even I had a moment where I was like, oh, have I got to go to 4:3? Is that going to help? I don't want bars at the side. What am I... I had a good 20 minutes of that at the beginning of the movie. And I think most people are just like, you know what? I'm just going to... I want to watch something where people's faces are in proportion.
Yeah, right.
No, it is very, very unfairly maligned, and I'm going to go as far as to say I think the first half of this movie is top to bottom.
I think the first half of this movie is perfect, yeah.
Of the franchise, certainly of the sequels.
Yeah, it's so good.
There is a kind of momentum, and I don't quite know where it's coming from because it's been 5 years since the last Die Hard, so there shouldn't be any momentum at all.
That's another thing for me. Like, I remember seeing a preview for this movie maybe the day before it came out, and I was like, whoa, a Die Hard sequel? Like, it came out of nowhere. I was like, oh, I'm excited. And I remember seeing it and just thinking, that's a good movie. And this movie tried to do more than the other movies. This movie had something to say about race and about how the police the neighborhoods that they're in and that kind of thing.
It's a real, between Die Hard and Die Hard 2 Die Harder, I don't get the sense of maybe there were cataclysmic social changes between those two movies, but you don't get a sense of them in Die Hard 2. Here you get a sense. Time has passed. Shit has gone down in America.
Yeah.
Everything
and not
is
only
getting
that, but
reduced
shit
to
has
race.
gone down
Every
in John
single
McClane's
encounter.
life. What was that? Sorry, go ahead.
Every single encounter comes down to racial tension.
Yes. Yeah.
Between it is insane, and I don't think maybe part of the reason that the people are not fond of this movie is that it brings up some uncomfortable truths. I don't know if it necessarily deals with it in the right way.
If there's one thing we've learned about white people, it's that they don't like to feel uncomfortable. So maybe that's the answer. That might be the key of, oh, this makes me feel a little oogie. Do I have to do I have to actually think about my own thoughts and feelings about race, I'd rather not. This movie's terrible. Like,
I
it
mean,
has that feeling. But to me, this movie is so ambitious compared to the other movies in that way.
yeah, there's a sense of, I think, that there's a sense that both the Hollywood movies have changed
Mm-hmm.
and American society's changed, and you get that. But rather than that, and this is where Die Hard 4.0 excels to me as well. Is it's like, rather than them backing away from that and trying to be kind of anachronistic, they go with the flow when it comes to, movies are different now, people are different now, and we're going to acknowledge all of that. We are going to confront it head on. And boy, do they confront it head on.
Right, yeah.
The first half of this movie is like, John Singleton Tarantino
Right, but
hybrid in terms of how it's made, in terms of the kinds of issues it's talking about.
that's like, I disagree a little bit. Like, to me, it has that sensibility, but it still has that really slick kind of look to it that you have with most movies directed by John McTiernan.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I think that this is coming right off the back of Pulp Fiction.
Yeah.
And yeah, not necessarily in Tarantino's visual style, but there's a sense that Bruce Willis and Sam Jackson have gone through the Tarantino machine, and this is them coming out the other side.
Yeah, there is a sense that Tarantino kind of changed the world in that way, or not the world, but like the movie world, and what people. It's like, what would make the movie get greenlit?
Yeah, a little bit, and I had that thought too. But what it does for like those two actors coming off that movie, they are just riding. It feels like the Pulp Fiction never ended. They gave what are arguably like career best performances there, and this feels like the tail end of that. That they are just that they are just carrying on that screen brilliance into this movie. I mean, they do not miss a step in the first half of this movie in their performances.
No, I agree. And I don't think it's talked about nearly enough about, maybe when you take the movie in total, that's why it changes. But the first half of this movie is just like beat for beat. It's so good.
There's also, I mean, like I think sequels live or die by the kind of choices they make early on about what they're going to do to the characters that we already know.
Well, I was just going to say the same thing, because this movie, it's like at times they're trying to make too much of a joke out of it, but there's some dark stuff going on with the character of John McClane himself, And I feel like the writer probably wanted more of that in it, the idea of him actually being an alcoholic, of him kind of hitting bottom with his marriage and his family and all of that.
Yeah.
And it's talked about and it's referenced, but more in a comic relief sort of way.
Yeah, I mean, it is like the fact that he's hungover is kind of like the running gag.
Yeah.
Of the movie, so I get that, but it is. I think in that the first time you see John McClane, and we were talking about, Die Hard 2. It's Bruce Willis from Moonlighting.
Yeah, he's like moonlighting, and he's a family man, and
they're
so
here,
in love.
We're starting to get this rough-edged action hero, right? I mean, he doesn't have to grow into that anymore. He's already in a vest.
Yeah.
Because he just got dragged out of bed.
Right.
And he's hungover.
He's immediately in his tank top.
Yeah, and I just think it's, oh man, it's that scene in the truck where they first pull it, they and he realize, the cops and he realize that he's gonna have to play some weird German guy's mind games to avoid a bomb going off. And they're, I don't know if it's the direction of that scene or the performances, they are looking at each other like, this is the worst possible time for this to be happening.
Yeah.
I have no faith in in either of you.
Yeah,
That you're gonna pull this off.
yeah, it's definitely in the performances of like, this is the last guy we want
And
trying
I
to
think,
help us.
and
Why
I
did
think,
he have
this
to
is
ask
the
for
first
McClane?
time we really get like a procedural drama in a Die Hard. Before we've
Right.
kind of had uniform cops, security guards, that kind of thing. Now it's like, we're talking about New York detectives. We're in the world of NYPD Blue or Homicide.
Yeah, totally.
And it's and those shifts in, from going from John as the hero to the anti-hero, essentially.
He
He's
really
also
is, yeah.
astoundingly racist,
Right, right, yeah.
which is something, I never, I don't know, no, I never clocked it because I knew that all the banter between him and Sam Jackson was based around this, but I never got the sense of like, that's like, oh, he's saying a lot of racist shit to Zeus. Zeus is saying a lot of racist shit back, but he's the guy with power.
Right, exactly. He's the white man.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's just like,
But that's an interesting moment later in the movie when Bruce Willis says, "You don't like me because you're racist." And the look on Sam Jackson's face is so perfect.
And he lies
Like,
about
what, white man?
he lies about about a bomb being in a black area of the city to make him
Right.
join
To
him.
make this
And that is a
citizen-
wonderful moment of like, they're really chipping away at John McClane and what he actually represents at this point in history is not a great thing. It's not a thing that we're supposed to necessarily admire in the way that we did 10
Well, to
years
me,
ago.
that's front and center in the last sequel, but we'll get there when we get there. But, talking about this movie, the first thing he does or is made to do is stand in Harlem with the sign with the N-word on it. I mean, holy shit.
Yeah, not even the music from Curb Your Enthusiasm could make this a less comfortable moment
Right.
of cinema.
Yeah. I mean, oh man, it's oh god, it just kind of, I'm sweating just thinking about it.
Do you know the production story of them having to, when they were filming on location in Harlem?
I know he couldn't. The word wasn't there. It had to be added digitally. Yeah.
Which just goes to show how closely you're brushing against real social problems that are happening on a daily basis in and around American cities.
Absolutely.
And it's a bold move. I think it is that they're being exploitative as well. That's fair to say, but I think at least in the first half of the film, this is a movie with a social conscience, or at least it's saying, we can't make the same kind of Die Hard movie that we did before.
Right.
And for all its later faults, the series has always kind of proceeded with that idea in mind, that we're going to change with the times. Whether that's the kind of movies that are being made or what's going on in society, we are going to shift with that.
Yeah.
And it works
that's
remarkably well, I think, here. For a good chunk of this movie.
Well, we're just starting to get into it, so let me ask you about this. We've got Jeremy Irons. He is our baddie in this movie.
Yeah.
And we're bringing back a Gruber, and I want to know what you think about that because, I'm of two minds.
Yes. Me too.
One is that feels like a very sequelitis kind of thing to do, is to bring back a family member. But I think it works in this movie. I like that they do it. And despite the fact that even Jeremy Irons has a hair, his haircut is what he calls midlife crisis haircut. And yet everything about him, to me, makes the movie work, including the idea that you never even see him until 50 minutes into the movie.
Well, that's the part of the movie that I really like, and I think after that it becomes more difficult to accept him. I mean, first of all, aside from Jeremy Irons, this is again something we've never seen in a Die Hard. This menacing guy on a phone giving them riddles.
Right.
I
Yeah.
mean, this is, not to put too fine a point on it. This is a kind of these are action movies. You don't expect to be doing math and like puzzles.
Correct.
And it's it carries the first half of this movie with this game playing idea, them rushing around New York. There's a different game in other spots. It makes it more of a detective type film.
Well,
In a
like
way
you
that
said,
Die
more
Hard's never done before.
procedural.
And it's so beautifully executed. I really regret him not being unseen for the entirety of the movie. I think
I
he's
think you
so
would think
effective
differently.
in that role.
I think you would think differently if they actually did that.
I mean, it's such a. I mean, it's hard because it's part of the story that it's a big anticlimax when you actually see him and he's just going, "Oh yes, I'm scared German guy on the phone, okay," and then he goes and does his real stuff.
Right.
That's part of the story, so you do have to do that. But I'm like, I like this red herring storyline way more than what is actually really happening.
Well, we've talked about how in the first movie, they're, you know, they're accepted as terrorists when they're actually thieves. In the second movie, they are believed to be thieves who are actually terrorists.
Yes.
In this movie, they're both.
In this movie,
They finally
they're
come
both
together.
and neither, and some of them are, some of them aren't. I have no fucking idea what the original plan was and what it became. And that for me is one of the biggest weaknesses of this movie. Like, I kind of wanted them to just decide: it's like I wanted to know. All I wanted to know at the end of the movie, double and triple crosses aside, I don't care about this other guy who thought they were all terrorists but was actually, was disappointed to find out they were thieves. I don't care about it.
Lurch was
But I do
disappointed.
care. It's like, does this guy like his brother? And I did not get a clear answer on
I
that.
do not get a clear answer either. Yes, I know.
What does he feel about Alan Rickman? That is all I wanted to know. And we never get a definitive answer on that. And that's a kind of... I just think, the second half of the movie is so messy that I just wanted a clear answer on that. Instead, I get Jeremy Irons eating a hard-boiled egg. I mean, that's not what I want. But I take nothing away from him. His American accent is even worse than Alan Rickman, which I didn't think was possible, but it is. And I think...
Come on, you don't love him
knowing
saying,
that-
"Holy Toledo."
knowing that he is playing a role in that first half of the movie does make it better. I just don't think what they replaced it with in the reality of the movie is strong enough to carry that second half of the movie.
Oh, well,
But that's not on Jeremy Irons.
No. All right. We're just getting started here. We've got more to talk about with Die Hard with a Vengeance. We're going to take a quick commercial break, ladies and gentlemen. Catch us on the flip side. We'll be back in a moment. Look, people, we're living in strange times. We know that, don't we? Of course we do. People don't even know what to do with themselves. We're getting stir crazy. Well, get outside and get yourself some great food, I say. You need to go to Slater's 50/50 in Point Loma's Liberty Station. It's time to treat yourself to booze, to beer, to burgers, and more. They have their full menu, people. Their full menu, I say. How many restaurants do you know that are doing that? Most places are doing a quarter of their menu, probably. Some might be doing a half. Maybe a few have got 3/4 of a menu. But Slater's 50/50 has their full menu, including their signature 50/50 patty. It's half ground beef. It's half ground bacon. It's 100% delicious. What more could you possibly ask? Worried about social distancing? Well, it is in place, people. Tables are separated, and the staff will always be seen wearing masks. You're out of excuses. Get off your keister and come on down to Liberty Station's own Slater's 50/50 Indoor dining available. Outdoor dining available. Bring the family. Bring your dog. Come enjoy the normal again. Good day to you. I said good day. And we're back. We are here, Tom and I, talking about the 1995 movie Die Hard with a Vengeance. Tom, we've talked about the racial component to this movie.
Yeah.
We've talked about the kind of anti-hero that John McClane has become. We've gotten into Jeremy Irons. What do you think about bringing a Gruber back? Do you like that? Do you like the idea of them bringing back this, or is that too much of a sequelitis trope to you? Or
Well, it's kind of, it's nice how it works in the context of the series, because unlike Die Hard 2, this needs to be John McClane, because even if he's not out for revenge, and there's a strong possibility that he's not in any way, shape, or form.
right, we don't know.
that his brother having been killed by John is just it's just an opportunity for him to play this game. It's just a happy accident. But
yeah, is it more of a ruse just so he can get what he wants?
but plot wise, it means that it has to be John McClane. So there's a reason why he's thrown back into another high stakes
of course.
action disaster situation.
I'll tell you the one thing that almost completely sells me on it is the choice by John McTiernan when one of the FBI guys kind of shows him the picture, and then he realizes do you know the name Gruber or whatever it is he says, and then you see the shot of Alan Rickman, and it's like in McClane's mind's eye, this is what he sees, him falling, and then the shot of him kind of dawning on him, okay, I get everything that's happening now and why it's happening, I think is great. It's so good.
I'm against the choice in principle, but I remember.
Come on, it works.
Well, I think reusing footage from previous movies in a sequel is just a bad road to go down. It never ends well. But if you are gonna do it,
this is how to do it, right?
That second long flash, which, as you say, is like POV, kind of point of view sort of shot. I think it's brilliantly done for what it is, even though what it is not a good thing for a sequel to be doing. No, but I thought it was great, and I love the fact that they referred to what happened at Nagasaki as that thing in the building in LA.
Yeah,
like it's another great sense of like nobody on the East Coast gives a shit about what went down there. They could give two fucks about this kind of high tech LA heist. And I think that's beautifully done. So,
kind of hitting on what we've been talking about, where does this movie go wrong for you? We know that we both like the first half we think is great, or at least the first 50 minutes. Where does it start going off the rails? Is it the moment that Jeremy Irons is seen?
Yeah, I mean that's the point at which certainly it all starts to kind of fall apart in so many different ways for me.
Okay, tell me how.
Well, first, so we get a very clear shift in genre. We've gone from a movie about terrorism to a movie that is a heist movie. But the terrorist bit is it's partly because the first half establishes itself so well you don't want it to go away. Okay. And it goes away very quickly. And what they
But I think I stick with it in that way because for me, it was just as clever an idea for a heist as the first movie was.
But it's less about the heist itself and more about the representation of the villains. We've never seen villains this broadly drawn before. They're so cheesy and melodramatic in a way that isn't pleasant to me. And I just don't.
Is that because John McTiernan, we were talking about Die Hard 2 and how melodramatic that movie is, but that's leaned into top to bottom with Renny Harlin, like the directing, the choices of shots, the music, everything about it's melodramatic.
Yeah.
This, it's not filmed in a way that makes you think documentary, but it's just under that. You know what I mean? And so it's a different shooting style by John McTiernan. And so is there that disconnect?
There's that disconnect. I think as well, everything that I kind of enjoy about John and Zeus in the first half of the movie falls away very quickly. They become these kind of stumbling, bumbling fools very quickly. They're like they're riding around New York on kids' bikes at one point.
Right. Yeah.
Later on in the movie, John McClane is at the top of a like water blows out of a tunnel, and he's kind of riding the wave at the top.
Right.
Elsewhere in the movie, there's a pancake syrup bomb. You know, comedy is the bread and butter of this franchise, but slapstick comedy is in a Die Hard is not a good thing.
Yeah, I guess for me you're right, but it's not intentionally slapstick.
Oh,
they don't realize that it's coming across as slapstick.
There's a motif of singing in the rain on the soundtrack when water is rushing down the tunnel chasing John McClane.
That's true.
Truck.
That's true. I can't take that away from you. You're right.
You know, and but I agree with you what you're saying about good intentions, because I think part of what John McTiernan wants to do with the second half of the movie is kind of Hitchcockian. He wants to push the suspenseful side of the thriller genre rather than because the first half is so frenetic and so relentless. We don't get to take a breath in the first half of the movie. So I think he is consciously slowing things down, but that is such a dangerous thing to do, especially in a Die Hard, which, you know, when we get to A Good Day to Die Hard, we will see in force that, you know, when you have that dive in pace, you almost get the same happening with the interest and the creativity of what you're doing. Mm-hmm. Just kind of becomes a bit more lackluster,
right?
And I just found that, and then, you know, I just can't, at a certain point I can't follow the plot. They keep double crossing, triple crossing, double bluffing, triple bluffing.
I don't think it's that hard to follow.
Yeah, and then we find out that everything that John and Zeus have been doing for the first hour of the movie is just a waste of time.
Well, yeah.
It's like, well, you know, that sucks. I was really enjoying it.
You wanted to see some kids blown up, didn't you? You monster.
You know, there in its defense, there are some nice kind of late additions character-wise. The truck driver, I don't know who that guy is, but he is phenomenal.
But he should get an Academy Award for his performance in this movie. He's that good.
And what's great as well is it plays with type. You expect him to be this kind of like sarcastic teamster, but he's the guy who knows that knowledge file.
Yeah.
This repository of everything.
He's the guy who knows Chester A. Arthur is the 21st president of the United States.
It's you know, it's beautiful. And then there's the kind of fatigue syndrome of, you know, with 20 minutes in the movie to go, we're just seeing the same scenario repeated again and again in not very interesting ways.
Yeah, there is, you know, and this happens, you know, a few times throughout the series where McClane is caught and nobody just shoots him in the head. Well, we're going to try to be clever about it one last time. We're going to tie you to the bomb.
Yeah.
Essentially just to give you a chance to escape, you know? So it's got some sequelitis, bad guy problems in that sense.
And also, you know, like, even though Holly is not killed off, and the idea of, you know, that they are just separated, then she's not dead, they're not divorced, there's always a sense that they could get back together. To me, what was great about that move at the beginning of the third film, it's like saying, this is not about family anymore. Yeah. This guy is out on his own. And so for them to kind of like half walk that back with him making the phone call, you know, I don't know if they were just like, if Bonnie Bedaly was like, I'm not doing this movie, I might do one later on.
Well, so let me ask you this.
And they were like, let's keep our options open. But what I liked about the original choice to make him, you know, not a family man anymore and separated and take the family out of the equation temporarily,
Uh-huh.
is that, it felt like what they do in Alien 3, where they were like, okay, we made Ripley part of a family.
Let's
Just
kill him.
kill
Yeah.
that kid and Bill
So
Paxton.
many people hate that. I like that about that movie, but we're not into that series. I'm not gonna. I can't.
No, but to me that was comparable, and so them walking it back and then making the call at the end of the movie, I would have been much more satisfied with the original idea of he forgets to call her again because he's a douche, and his life is now more about high stakes hostage situations.
That's
than...
just where his life went. Every
Yeah,
few years, he's got to kill some terrorists.
I think it's a little disappointing to kind of end on that now. Why the fuck they go to Canada in the last 5 minutes of the movie?
This is my biggest problem with this movie, because you're not wrong about everything else you're saying. Like, up until that explosion and until like we start getting, I think I like it a little more than you do. This idea of the, a reason for the bomb to go off where it went off so that they can have the heist. That feels like a throwback to the first movie that I can kind of get behind. The idea of McClane saying, there's no gold on this boat. I know the man, I know the family. Like
I know the family.
I like that.
Yeah.
But the idea to me that this movie goes to Canada, these two men are injured in a way. Like, one of them has been shot in the leg. One of them is, might not be able to use his arm. That's how much metal went into his shoulder. You know what I mean? They both just got exploded off of a boat, launched a half a mile away from it into the sea. And then somehow this cop from New York and a civilian from Harlem are going to go to Canada to foil a crime is such complete bullshit and nonsense. It's like offensive. And yet, it does have that one great moment where the chopper's sitting there. He's got the M60 pointed right at him. He looks up at the box. Jeremy Irons looks at the box because it's well directed because it's John McTiernan. And... say hello to your brother for me. He's like, go, get out of here. And the thing explodes. It's great. But
that moment would be a lot more impactful
if it happened in New York,
for sure, whether he liked his brother or not. He'd be like, I wish he'd have said that. I don't care about that bastard.
Right.
Or something.
Anything.
Another really unusual choice that I kind of like, that I don't know if I like or not, but it's just true, is there've been no children in a Die Hard. This movie's full of children.
Yeah, chocked full of them.
Holy shit, there are a lot of children in this movie. And what is that?
They're all in danger.
This is something I think we'll get to talking about in the next movie, the next Die Hard. But one of the things that struck me when I was watching Die Hard with a Vengeance, I'd never thought about before, is this history has really caught up with this movie. This movie is like a pre-9/11 movie.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
In terms of how it represents New York. And so was the second movie as well. So was Die Hard 2. You don't make jokes about planes dropping on the White House lawn after 9/11. No. And likewise here, there's so much of like New York under attack in a way that's not treated lightly, but it's not treated with the kind of gravity
because you would have already had
2001.
The first World Trade Center bombing, in the parking lot underneath. That would have already happened. And the very beginning of this movie feels very much like that. It's kind of an incredible shot the way it starts, and you have that great long shot of cars stopping and people getting out of their cars. It's like really a remarkable, fantastic shot. But so it harkens back to that first bombing, which was just a few years before that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you're right in the sense of, like, none of that probably would be in it after 9/11.
And I'm not saying that that they should become psychic and see how things are going to go. It's just the watching it now, and it is something they definitely recognize. 4's relationship to 3 in terms of acknowledging what's happened in between
In
the
between,
movies is
sure.
almost as drastic as two to three.
Yeah.
You know, it's just the one is about, you know, we Rodney, you know, one is Rodney King, the other one is 9/11.
Yeah.
So we've got to do things differently, and it's just it's a really interesting viewing experience. And I just wonder how, you know, the use of children here as like they're both like small time criminals and these kind of like, you know, they're the moral center of the film, but they're also the immoral center of the
Right.
film. And that feels like a really nice. That's the part I like about it, is that they fight. You know, John and Zeus realize what's going on because a couple of punk kids have figured out that there's no cops anywhere in New York.
Right. Yeah.
But you know, we just wouldn't be able to touch on things that frivolously from a few years onwards.
No. So, just before we wrap up here, I'm curious, do you know about the original ending for this movie?
I do not.
So,
I assume it was not the one in Canada.
it was not. It was not in Canada. I think it was just Germany.
What?
So what happens is you see Jeremy Irons getting a coffee in a little place, I think in Germany. Bruce Willis shows up. It turns out he reminds him that he was a cop. The aspirin that he gave him, he actually traced the batch to where it was made and then first put out, and it was put out at a pharmacy down the street from where he finds him. But John McClane looks very kind of clean cut, and he looks put together. And so Gruber is, you know, he's like, you look good. And he mentions that he quit drinking. So you have this kind of, you know, the idea that this character changed, but then it goes really dark because he takes out what he calls a Chinese rocket launcher, which looks like a miniature rocket launcher. And whatever directional thing that tells you which way is forward has been taken off. And
Mike, you're not responsible for making more sense of this than it already makes. Don't worry. Don't worry.
Just so, all right, I'm drawing it out. But essentially, he starts doing the Simon game with Simon. He starts asking him riddles, and he tells him you can just switch the thing any way you want, point it wherever you want. And he finally gets a riddle wrong, and he thinks he's pointing it at Bruce, takes a 50-50 shot, hits fire, and kills himself with it. And Bruce walks off.
Yeah, that's wow. Okay.
My question to you, is that a better ending?
No. Only because I like that it brings back the whole Simon Says riddle component. That's the part of the movie I love. But Bruce Willis, John McClane, is not good at that. Zeus is the one who's good at that. That's why you need him.
Right,
He's
yeah.
the brains of the operation.
True.
John would not be able to outwit, and maybe that's why they went against it. I guess this is what, a few days later, or
It might
a week
even be
later,
weeks,
a month
yeah.
later. Well, that doesn't help things. The time frame, at least they kept it within that 24-hour time frame in the actual
original,
movie.
yeah.
Because that really helps the diehards when you do that.
Yeah, I agree in
But-
general.
I mean, I had that awful thought, which, you know, the impossible ending that will never happen but might be better than what you get is, what if they just got away?
Right.
I mean,
I actually have been thinking about that a lot, and I think that's the most interesting ending. I love the idea of John McClane saying he beat me.
yeah.
Like,
I
roll
had that thought, and I
credits,
thought,
man.
it would never happen. The studio would never let
No.
it happen. I don't know if they even want that to happen.
But it's by far
even
the
if-
most interesting ending.
But, you know, I just had that thought of like, well, we flipped so many things on their head with this film in terms of like people's expectations, how movies have changed, how movies have got darker in terms of complexity and how we, think about crime fighting, maybe you could pull it, maybe we could pull it off.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, it's just I'm more object. It's like, this is a New York film. You take it out of New York, it might as well not be in the same film.
No, yeah.
I get so Germany is not gonna help things.
All right.
Maybe if they went back to LA, that's about the only or Washington Airport or Dulles Airport. That's it.
He catches him
that's
at
the
Dulles.
only places they can go.
Well, in talking about this movie, originally I had slated 4 the best, then 3, then 2. 5, of course, last.
Poor 5.
And for me, it's because the one thing I really like about this movie is it really takes a big swing at doing something other than just being a police procedural. And it's the only film in the series to take a big swing at something as important as race. And race in America, both at that time and of course still today. But the second half of the movie is...
I completely agree with you, and I would have less of a problem with it if its flaws weren't concentrated in one half of the movie where you can go...
was just...
this is me absolutely nitpicking, going, well, the second half of this movie is not, all the problems are there. So it looks like this movie's taken a nosedive. There's
some good shit
in comparison to 2 and 4. There's probably the same amount of flaws. They're just evenly distributed throughout the movie. It's just easier to pick on.
A lot of the stuff on the boat,
it was so good for so long.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff on the boat I really like. I like that by the end that Zeus is so infested that he's like, I can jump. And the cop is like, you're insane. Like, no, that's a 50-foot drop.
I don't think it's possible to do a bad 2 people being tied together in a movie scene. I just don't think it could possibly happen. But this one is really good. There's the great bit with the locksmith where he says, "Can you pick the lock?" It's like, "What? Because I'm black."
Because I'm black.
No,
right.
because he's fucking locksmith. Great.
Yeah.
So
those racial dynamics are still at play.
Yeah.
And the chip is still on his shoulder 60 seconds before he's going to die. And that is so true to Zeus. By the way, I think Samuel L. Jackson, just fantastic, like pitch perfect, great in this movie. He's so good.
He is so good, and I think, well, with both him and Willis, and this is why this movie in many ways grows for me over time, and rather than recede as it does for most people, is that we're getting to, there's only a few years before these guys will not be making good movies again.
Right.
So this is real. This is not as good as it gets, but it's close.
Yeah.
It's very close.
It's a good movie. Listeners.
I love the fact that, John McClane can just fall into these double acts so well with virtually anyone.
Right.
And that when the character's working, it's when he is in these pairings that are often interracial and always about, the brawn split.
Brawn, yeah.
And I actually think the next one is the best one of those.
I agree. And we're going to talk about that dropping soon. Our next episode. What is it, Tom?
Depending on where you live in the world, it is Live Free and or Die Hard ? Or not.
No question mark. Live Free or Die Hard. That's what we're talking about.
Shouldn't there be a question mark there?
No.
I know there's not in the real New Hampshire slogan.
I'm saying there actually should be. It's a statement. Live free or die hard.
So that's just a statement.
Yeah. Although, to be fair, Somebody who would say that probably isn't wearing a mask right now, so they should go fuck themselves.
Well, I'm sure we'll get into that. There are a lot of there's a lot of questions about citizenry in the next film coming up.
There is indeed. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's it for Die Hard with a Vengeance. If there's something we missed, something we overlooked, you let us know. Tell us what you think. Tell us how you rank them. How do you think about our rankings? Is this movie good or is it bad? Find us on Facebook, Instagram, find us on the tweets. Let us know what you think. Thank you very much, Tom. Until next time, take care, everybody.
If you're anything like me, you spend the majority of the day wondering whether you want coffee, beer, or wine. Whichever way you fall, Brew Bar has you covered. Located in the heart of 3rd Avenue Village in glorious downtown Chula Vista, California, which is also my neck of the woods, Brew Bar is a coffee shop, bar, and eatery rolled into one delightful package. Tim and Alex run the place, and let me tell you, listeners, these guys know their coffee. And after you've been in their company, so will you. They turned me on to pour over, and it's literally all I drink now. If for some crazy reason you don't want to try the best coffee in the world, they've got espresso drinks, all kinds of teas, and even coffee cocktails. You heard me? Coffee tails. And we're just getting started. Bottle service on craft beer and wine, alcoholic and caffeinated potions, an all-day food menu with plenty of vegan options. All served up in an atmosphere hip enough to know you're getting the best quality, but not too hip that you feel the need to drive to 7-Eleven and get a bucket of brown swill. Brew Bar. It's the best place to be for beer, wine, coffee, and tea. And if you go, you might even see me.